Thank you, Mr. President. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, few people other than scientists and national security experts were familiar with gain-of-function research.
Senator?
I'm sorry? What do you want me to say? I asked to initiate the quorum call.
Objection. Senator from Kansas.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, few people other than scientists and national security experts were familiar with gain-of-function research. Now, as we continue to search for the origin of this pandemic and begin to learn more about the dangerous research that's been largely kept from the public eye, it's becoming a household phrase. Before we get started on the current state of play, I'd like to give a brief history of this research and how the federal government has poorly, perhaps negligently, approached its oversight and funding. In late 2011, over a decade ago, the NSABB, which is NIH's advisory board, stopped two scientists from publishing an avian influenza gain-of-function study. Why? Because they were afraid that this study would educate bioterrorists. That's right, in 2011, a decade ago, scientists had figured out how to make H5N1, highly pathogenic avian influenza, more contagious, which would have been catastrophic for American agriculture. Dr. Fauci personally called both scientists and convinced them to volunteer to pause their experiments. In early 2012, Dr. Fauci encouraged all influenza scientists to voluntarily pause influenza gain-of-function research and told them, and I quote, "It's essential we respect the concern of the public domestically or globally and not ask them to take the word of influenza scientists." Dr. Fauci obviously concerned about the public perception out there. Dr. Fauci also almost prophetically stated that he worried about, and I quote again, unregulated laboratories, perhaps outside of the United States, doing work sloppily and leading to an inadvertent pandemic. Accidental release is what the world is really worried about. And I end the quote from Dr. Fauci. In 2014, after several biosecurity accidents in the United States research labs, the Obama White House implemented the gain-of-function moratorium on influenza as well as MERS and SARS research because of the potential risk of lab accidents and inherent gain-of-function danger. These two moratoriums clearly demonstrates that the United States government and NIH, our primary public health agency, understood the risk associated with this research and understood the threats it posed. Despite this pause, though, certain viral gain-of-function research projects continued at the University of North Carolina. Research was later shared with Chinese virologist named Dr. Shi, the Bat Lady. She was famous for her copious amounts of research conducted on coronaviruses that live in bats. Now, outside of those North Carolina studies, Dr. Fauci failed to heed his own call on United States scientists to pause their gain-of-function studies and offshored the paused research to China, not just once and not just recently, but practically continuously for over a decade. It's disturbing that one of our top public health agencies directed this risky research to be offshored while encouraging the pause in that exact same research here in the United States. In 2012, Dr. Fauci gave a new grant to Peter Daszak's EcoHealth Alliance, a company that America will soon know the name of all across of America. He gave a new grant to Peter Daszak's EcoHealth Alliance for avian influenza research in China, which was truly gain-of-function research. In 2014, Dr. Fauci gave another new grant, another gain-of-function grant to Dr. Daszak and EcoHealth for SARS research in China. Through these grants, Peter Daszak partnered with the Wuhan Institute of Virology. In late 2017, NIH announced a lift on the gain-of-function pause, apparently without consultation with Senate-confirmed State Department or national security leadership. Significantly, there was no director of the Office of Science and Technology Policy in place, with only an acting HHS secretary at the helm. NIH essentially lifted the moratorium on their own by slipping it in between administrations and self-policing. Today, we can't see the research record from Dr. Fauci's offshored projects because the Chinese Communist Party has possession, or at least supposedly has possession, of EcoHealth's records, and NIH resists sharing theirs. By all counts, Dr. Fauci and EcoHealth's research in China led to the COVID-19 pandemic and Dr. Fauci's worst fears that a lab accident in a foreign lab became reality. At a very important hearing yesterday at the Capitol, hosted by Senator Paul before the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Subcommittee on Emerging Threats and Spending Oversight, Dr. Richard Ebright, a renowned microbiologist, declared that it is indeed possible that this research did lead to the outbreak of COVID-19. Dr. Stephen Quay and Dr. Kevin Esfelt, other expert witnesses on the panel, agreed that viral gain-of-function offers no civilian use or benefit. Let me say it again. Both these doctors agreed that viral gain-of-function offers no civilian use or benefit, but is so risky it can cause a pandemic that it will have a worse impact than a nuclear attack. It is indeed a weapon of mass destruction. Despite warnings and past lab accidents, our public health agencies like NIH continue to fund this weapon of mass destruction research, often in China nonetheless. In fact, at one point, NIH paid for more viral gain-of-function experiments than the Department of Defense, according to hearing testimony given by Dr. Fauci on this topic in 2012. Shockingly, Congress has minimal insight into the amount of research that NIH performs. There's no transparency into the risk evaluation process. There's no proper oversight. Recently, and this is news, our office just learned that USAID is currently paying $125 million to the Washington State University Paul Allen School for Global Health to collect potential pandemic pathogens in high-risk areas for outbreak. Once collected, these samples are being used in dangerous gain-of-function experiments through their Deep Vision grant. This project initially partnered with 5 countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, but could expand to others. The university researchers are collecting, storing, and experimenting on these pathogens in foreign laboratories in each country. Even worse, these hazardous research techniques are being taught to foreign research while experimenting with potentially deadly pathogens in laboratories where the U.S. has no regulatory control authority. No process exists to screen U.S. researchers or foreign researchers by intelligence analysts for their potential as threat actors. The U.S. has no ability to control who the technology or the deadly pathogens are shared with in these foreign labs and cannot enforce proper storage techniques. USAID is putting everyone at risk right now. Our U.S. public health agencies like NIH and CDC cannot be entrusted to oversee risky research with the current guardrails that are self-selecting and self-policing. Certainly, our United States Agency for International Development cannot be entrusted. Yet federal agencies continue to dispense funds for gain-of-function research. Now, Dr. Fauci recently came before Congress and publicly declared that he had no intention to stop using U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund Chinese Communist Party research projects. Folks, this is a national security issue. Since January of 2020, I've been trying to sound the alarm on this virus, on this issue, on this weapon of mass destruction, but it's largely falling on deaf ears in Congress and with the current administration. Yesterday's HISCAC hearing was the first time Congress examined this subject since the outbreak of COVID-19, and unfortunately, none of my colleagues across the aisle bothered to show up for this hearing, clearly declaring that this was not a priority for them. Additionally, mainstream media has attempted to bury concerns about gain-of-function research and the possibility of a lab leak. This is unacceptable. We must pause this research until national security experts can help create appropriate risk metrics, guardrails, and processes for this research. It's important to note that this is estimated to only compromise less than 0.1% of all biomedical research and less than 1% of virology research. Dr. Richard Ebright testified that because GOF research of concern can cause pandemics, this small part of the biomedical research enterprise is highly consequential and requires effective oversight. And certainly that current oversight is not effective. Mr. President, this is a bipartisan national security issue, and anyone who studies this issue in depth will conclude that viral gain-of-function is a weapon of mass destruction. Anyone who examines this will conclude that COVID is like a nuclear hand grenade with its pin pulled out. It's already killed 1 million people and can kill millions more. Every witness will conclude, like we did yesterday, that the potential is much worse than any type of benefit from this research. This COVID virus is likely a product of U.S.-funded gain-of-function research. The research has produced no benefit in 10 years and with seemingly no benefit on the horizon. And this is why I brought my legislation to the floor today to place a moratorium on all federal research projects, grants to universities and other organizations conducting gain-of-function research and risky research on potential pandemic pathogens. This is an urgent matter that must be acted on today.
Kansas.
I want to thank my colleague for her kind comments, and certainly the chairwoman has my commitment to continue to work with her on the Pandemics Prevention Act as well. But if my colleagues do not agree with placing a full moratorium on gain-of-function research, I ask for unanimous consent to adopt the Safe Risky Research Act, which stops federal funds from being used to conduct risky research with countries that threaten our democracy and public health. Now, we recently learned that USAID has been paying for this dangerous research in China. We know that this research is being conducted in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, but we don't yet know all the other countries where they fund this risky research. What we do know is that despite their relationship with the State Department, this funding is being dispensed by USAID without State Department security consultations, oblivious to the proliferation potential. Federal agencies that oversee national intelligence maintain lists of countries that may pose a risk or threat to national security. The Department of State, for example, maintains a list that includes Burma, the People's Republic of China, Iran, North Korea, Pakistan, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and others. This legislation is common sense. We shouldn't be collaborating on dangerous research with our adversaries. I think it's obvious that all members of our committee agree with us, that they support this bill and this legislation. On March 14, the Health Committee held a markup where this amendment, the same text that's in this bill, is unanimously adopted in the Bipartisan Prevent Pandemics Act. I appreciate Chairwoman Murray working so hard, collaborating with ourselves, and during the markup, she supported this. Specifically, that it protected biomedical research enterprise, that it threads the needle, You stated that it threaded the needle in terms of protecting biomedical research enterprise while taking steps to address some of the concerns she's heard from other committee members. Given the inherent risk, NIH's unwillingness to fully cooperate with congressional oversight, and Senate Democrats' objection to taking the needed step of placing a complete moratorium on gain-of-function research, we must at least pass this narrow approach today.